Every day, you and I get bombarded with negative news. And just like our bodies becomes what we eat, our minds become the information that we consume. If you want to stay positive, it's so important that you also listen to stories that inspires you and uplifts you. In this podcast, we interview world-leading experts dedicated to solving the world's most pressing problems. And if you stick around, I promise you will not only be as informed as if you watch the news, you will feel uplifted, inspired, and have more positive energy in your life. Welcome to Great.com Talks with. Hi and welcome. Today, Great.com talks with Troy Vaughan, who is the president and CEO of the Los Angeles Mission. And if you haven't heard of them before, they are on a mission to provide help, hope, and opportunity to men, women, and children in need. And if you're new here into this podcast, definitely press subscribe, either on YouTube or in your podcast app, because today we will talk about how Los Angeles Mission strives to be a world leader among missions that provides for the poor, restore the addicted, and eliminate homelessness. Troy, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you for having me this morning.
All right, so I made a short introduction there, but how would you describe Los Angeles Mission to someone that hasn't heard of you guys before?
I think the Los Angeles Mission is a comprehensive human services organization with compassion that provides hope for everyone who enters our doors. We are a light, a bridge builder. We are an example of what transformation can look like. We are an example of how people should be treated, those that have been discarded normally by our society, and how they should be treated and received, provided dignity in their housing and their ability to transform their lives. And so we believe in the tripart nature of man, meaning that we're physical beings, we possess a soul, and we have a spirit. And all three of those aspects of who we are should be addressed. Obviously, our physical side, where our food and our clothing and our five senses dwell. And so we help individuals to stabilize their lives from that regard, and then focusing on their soul realm, where the emotions and their intelligence and imagination is. We provide opportunities for them to re-engage themselves in their own process of creativity. And then in their spirit, we're able to love humanity unconditionally and be compassionate about service to our neighbors. And so we approach our work from that lens, and we love the product that we get. We get transformed lives. And those individuals go on to be change agents in various sectors throughout the world. And we're very excited about that.
I can imagine that deep spiritual work is so crucial for those transformations, that for someone to change when it comes to addiction or maybe homelessness, that they need to also change spiritually and emotionally first.
Exactly. For me, it's a personal journey too. I was homeless. My own homelessness ended in 1992. And the very neighborhood that I serve in now, I used to sleep on the streets in. And I graduated from a mission and a Christian discipleship program. And it was at that time I found my purpose. I knew that God wanted my life to be used as an example of what transformation can look like if a person re-engages in their spirituality and who they are as a created being. And so I went on a life's journey to become the best person, but also to live my life in a very transparent way so that people can see that the hope is real, right? And that now that I lead the mission and I am the servant leader there, I get to also step into that every day by living my life in front of everybody and seeing that the hope and the possibility of change is near if you just stay committed to the process.
And imagine the power of having a leader for the organization that has been through the same experiences that the people you're trying to help. I can imagine how powerful that is. So
yeah, we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony, and we love not our life unto death. And that scripture to me means is that we cannot be afraid to live our lives for the benefit of other people. And a lot of times we don't want to share our past experiences because we believe that people will judge us or look down on us. But that's really the power we have as human beings. When we become transparent and willing to expose ourselves to become vulnerable, that's where we find our greatest strength. And I think our testimonies are needed more than ever so people can know that transformation is possible.
When I read through your website, I read the About You page about Troy, and I read that you had some really tough emotional experiences with your father growing up. And when I read it, I said, this transparency resonates with me. I feel connected to the work that you guys are doing because you are leading with vulnerability in the way you share that story.
Yeah, I mean, it was a traumatic experience for me, losing, my father when I was in the Marine Corps serving in the service and had been estranged from him and the way I lost him. It triggered something in me that was, it was so just heart-wrenching. And I snapped. I mean, I didn't come back for 7 years, brother. And I just tell you that, it took a lot of love and compassion from a lot of different people to pour back into my life. And so I can do the same for others now. And, when people suffer, when some people suffer so much loss in their life, they suffer so much trauma. And we don't realize that a lot of times that trauma triggers certain behaviors and we don't begin to address that trauma. And I think for me, once I started to address the reality of that and really look at different processes that helped me heal, like journaling, speaking about my father, and begin to see him in a different lens, that became helpful for me. And I try to share that experience with other people so that they can also find their way back if they have trauma in their life of a similar, at a similar level, or if it's something else that's their triggers. But helping them to confront those triggers, I think, is essential.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And those seems like such practical solutions, but someone needs to be emotionally inspired to start being willing to journal or look at your past from a different lens. So I can imagine how your story is needed to get people started.
Yeah, and the stories of others like me, right? Like, I think one of the things that we're doing at the Los Angeles Mission is empowering other people to tell their stories, right? And of course, using mine as an example of how that happens and as a backdrop, but certainly I'm not an anomaly, right? And so how do we continue to empower people to find their voice? And, when our people graduate, when our students graduate from our program, that's one of the things that we help them do. That's a part of our curriculum. It's helping them to find their story and to be able to tell that story and then use that story to advocate on behalf not only of themselves, but others that have gone through similar like passions, right? And so it's very important that we find the voice that's within us. Oh, I love your show and your podcast because it gives a platform for the stories to be told, but it gives voice and oftentimes to the voiceless so that people can be connected to real work that's happening and from that is transforming lives.
Yeah, I like it a lot how you are encouraging people to rewrite their stories, because I think people think so well in terms of stories. And then when they have a different plan for themselves, I can imagine that is causing them to make different emotional decisions.
And isn't that what life is about? A lot of times we grow from different iterations of ourselves, right? And sometimes when people lose one thing, they think that that's it. But we have to, we're created to be co-creators with our creator. And so that means that we have the ability to recreate or reimagine how our story goes. Because if you fail in one chapter, it doesn't mean that that's the end of the book, right? You get to write the next chapter and keep going. And we try to teach people to write the next chapter of their life and be proud of all of it. Because even when you're in process, sometimes it hurts and you don't really know what is going to be in the next chapter of your life. But when you look back on it, you needed that past chapter. You needed some of that before because it helped you become more balanced. When you embrace it, it actually becomes a point of healing and power to help you help others find their way out.
So you are sitting now on this, from my point of view, big bag or mountain of wisdom. Like I resonate with your perspectives a lot. But when someone comes to Los Angeles Mission, they are struggling with addiction, they're homeless, they're poor. What is your challenges to try to reach them? Is it like emotional or is it physical? What are the biggest challenges you're going through?
I think what happens is that the biggest challenge is for everyone to be seen. Sometimes we make life transformation, overly complicated. And I think most importantly for homeless individuals, we want to be seen. My biggest thing that I experienced when I was homeless is that I felt invisible. I felt like a leper. I felt like, a castaway. And society as a whole kind of lends itself to contributing to that. And so for me, I try to communicate to our team is that we want people when they first come in contact with us, whether that's through an outreach worker, whether that's walking in directly off the street, whether that's through one of our meal service programs, that we see them and we acknowledge them and we treat them as a human being, not as a homeless person, but as a human being because they have a story. They weren't born into homelessness. Something happened that triggered that. And we need to be mindful of that and have a conversation with them to find out what their story is, because that's when we're going to connect with them to help them find their solutions. And so for me, it's important that people be seen. And that's the greatest challenge, is to see people. Because sometimes, people, they put up barriers around themselves to survive when you're on the street, right? A lot say, well, people on the street, they don't smell well, they don't look clean, they look dirty and all that. But have we ever considered that that's a survival mechanism? And that's how they keep people away from them. And so if we push past those layers to get to the human being and begin to engage them, then that's when I think that we can really begin the work of transformation. But that is the most challenging part, is to push past the layers. And it takes time and it takes a willingness to see another human being in this world and to love them unconditionally. That's the challenge we have as human beings, because so many things are competing with that. And we just have to press past that within ourselves first, because we come to the table with all these learned behaviors, and we don't realize that even in our work of service, sometimes those learned behaviors, they help with our judgment, right? They inform our judgment, they inform our capacities. And so we have to do a lot of self-work as well so that we can be the type of human being that we need to be in this world.
It's interesting when I hear you speak, because I'm often curious, okay, what are you as an organization trying to accomplish in the next 10 years? But with you guys, I see that there is physical work that you do, like you say, but it's also a spiritual transformation. So I'm curious, what is your vision for the organization?
Well, we see ourselves as responsible to be a bridge builder. And what I mean by that is those that are closest to the solutions and the answers are normally furthest away from power and resources. So an organization like the Los Angeles Missions that's been around for 84 years, we're connected to power and resource. So we see it as our responsibility is those that are mostly impacted, that have the solutions, are brought to the table so that their voices can be heard. So 10 years from now, we're going to help transform Skid Row. There won't be people living on the streets the way you see it today. Right now, we're on a mission to bring dignity through design. So today I have a huge demo day, for example, and our dormitories that we have inside the mission are being reimagined so that we can create an aesthetic that when people walk in, they feel like people care. Oftentimes, when we think of a homeless shelter or you think of a homeless facility of our type, it's kind of institutionalized. And so what we want to do is we want to change that paradigm, and we want to create spaces both in the immediate need, but also in the long-term need, that people feel like they have a home and that people actually care, and they can self-select by choice what process that they want to go through without pressure. So, we are envisioning housing programs and job creation. We just had a big brainstorm on Friday where we're going to be creating, we already have a few social micro enterprises but we're going to expand our micro enterprise efforts so that we can empower people. But beyond giving them a job or by creating jobs, we want to create entities where people can have vested interest in ownership. And so creating nonprofit organizations and for-profit organizations that give people the vested interest of making sure that those organizations are successful. I think that's what's needed, right? Like when you create, an organization and that people can buy into and have 1% or 2% of ownership into a company, that would empower them in a way beyond belief, right? And so start to empower people for that kind of work product. So 10 years from now, we will have stabilization centers all across the county, potentially even the state. And those stabilization centers, led by the Los Angeles Mission and our partners, will be responsible for helping people to get launched off into whatever platform they need. We're working on serious partnerships right now. We have a partnership with Cisco Communications, where we actually are doing a training and job placement career academy here at the Los Angeles Mission. And people are going to be leaving with skill sets and starting out anywhere from $70,000, $80,000 a year in jobs. And this is the kind of transformation that we need to have, right? Like we have to empower people because we want to be able to create something that's sustainable. And only to do that, we have to create the jobs that we seek. To place people in.
Beautiful, and I agree. I think having that sense of ownership is crucial for those people to be engaged. And I think you're onto something there. And something that makes me curious is there are obviously people listening to this from all across the globe, and in most cities there are homelessness, there is addiction. Is there a message you would like to send to our listeners for how they can receive and be with people that are in these situations that they might not be aware of?
Yeah, I want to let people know homelessness is solvable. We can solve it in our lifetime, but we have to be willing to bring balance to the resources that we have across in the world. We have global imbalance. And some people live in excess and others live in poverty. And so the reason for that, I think is because our systems are designed to create these chasms. And we have to start treating people as human beings. And we have such class-driven societies across the globe. It's not just here in the States, but it's in other places where we create classes. And because we create class, we create the environment for the resources in the world to take care of everyone. There's just an imbalance, right? And so how do we reach into our humanity at the level of really understand that we are co-creators with the creator and create balance? I mentor young men. And so I was having my mentorship session and I was telling them, one of the names of God is Jehovah Jireh. And Jehovah Jireh means the God of more than enough. And so there's some points in our life where we have excess, we have so much. And when we realize that we have so much, we come into a place where we've entered into a relationship with the God of more than enough. And that's when we need to say, I need to find somebody to give something to. I have more than I can consume, even generationally. I can't even pass this on to generation to generation. And so until human beings come to a place where they look at their lives and they say, I have more than I need, that I can personally consume. Therefore, I'm responsible to actually be a blessing to other people. We'll never be able to do it, but I think we can do it. I think there's just so much compassion, especially across the globe when we come out of a thing called a pandemic. This is the one opportunity I think that we have as a human race to address poverty and homelessness and disenfranchisement, right, and inequity in our society. We have an opportunity to do it. And when you see somebody like Mackenzie Scott, who makes a commitment to give most of her wealth away, I think she understands Gyra, right? I think she understands I have more than enough. And now I have to be about something more responsible than I've ever been, which is finding other people to give to so that they can make an impact in the world.
Yeah, I think that kind of generosity is definitely a key. And like you said, I think homeless is very solvable. So let me ask you this. Someone listening to this podcast, because we're coming on towards the end of the interview here. Someone listening to this, they feel excited, inspired to be generous and do something to help people with homelessness and addictions. What are some action steps they can take right now?
Well, they can go to the losangelesmission.org. That's our website, and we give clear opportunities to give. And but also, if they are in communities where they want to give, and more than just money, I think people need to understand the power of their intellectual capacity. Sometimes people have creative gifting, witty inventions that can help organizations like the Los Angeles Mission run more efficiently. There's opportunities to do that as well. So I would say, one, you can give to organizations like the Los Angeles Mission. Certainly, we know how to use those gifts, and that will be an extension of our work is an extension of you and your love and your generosity. But also in your communities, I think it's important for you to find a willingness to be a part of the solution within your communities, and to find credible organizations that you can serve in. If you're a member of a local church, or a part of a synagogue or a temple or whatever your religious faith is, find ways of being of service. But I would just tell people on this call today, see your neighbor, see them. Don't let them be invisible anymore. If you live next to people and you don't know their name, then that's shame on you, right? You should know your neighbors, and your neighbors should know you. I think it's time for human beings to be neighborly and not just coexist and strangers passing in the night. But we have to start reaching into our compassion if we want to see our world change. Because don't our children deserve that? Our children deserve that we live in a world that has hope and possibility in it. And we need to start leading now. We don't have, just opportunities in the future to just wait. We have to start using this opportunity coming out of a pandemic to really begin to bring the change that we want. So I would say, if you would like to give to the Los Angeles Mission, we would love to honor your gift and to put that gift to great use. If you want to serve somewhere and you don't live in the Los Angeles area, find organizations like the Los Angeles Mission and serve in those organizations. Give your gift, your intellectual capacity, your compassion, your experience to serve in those organizations. But more importantly, be neighborly. Be neighborly. And I think that if we can all do that, we'll see change in our lifetime.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Troy, for taking the time to speak with us today. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Emil. Thank you, Emil. Thank you so much. God bless you, my friend.
God bless. And for you listening, if you enjoyed this interview, press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app, because that shows the algorithms that this is an important conversation. So more people can learn about the Los Angeles Mission and the work they do to spread hope, help, and opportunity to all men, women, and children that are in need. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
What is great.com? That is the most common question that we get. And the shortest answer I can give you is that we are a company that is moving money from the online casino industry and donates it to charities that is helping the environment. The long answer, unfortunately I don't have time to tell you today, but if you're curious, definitely Google whatisgreat.com to learn more.